You know, a lot of people say that the Marvel movies are unrealistic, but I have to say, this is the most realistic portrayal of cat ownership I've ever seen. Hello, interwebs. I hope you're all doing well, and say hello to my brand new Nerf phaser from Star Trek. It looks so damn cool, and it's a lot of fun. And also, I am here to review the latest MCU film, The Marvels. Before we get into it, I will say, because there's been a bunch of already released spoiler-free reviews, and I don't know how to make that screener magic happen, I'm just gonna go full spoilers for this review. I will keep it relatively spoiler-light towards the top of this review for people who haven't seen the movie yet, but I will try to at least give a kind of warning as I start to get further into more major spoilers for the film. But this is going to be a full spoiler discussion by the end of this. That being said, let me sort of talk about my feelings going into the Marvels, because I think a lot of people are just very down on Marvel at the moment for numerous different reasons. There's been all of the discussion about the behind the scenes of the Marvel, the treatment of the VFX industry, their oversaturation with TV shows, and then just generally the huge dip in quality in a lot of their work over the past few years. I think culminating mostly in Ant-Man Quantumania, which I think pretty much everyone, myself included, found to be a real distinct disappointment, with the only real highlights lately being the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which feels very much more like a James Gunn thing than it is a Marvel thing at this point. And then some people liking Loki as well, and I'm a little bit more down on Loki season 2 than I think some people are, but still find it to be at least somewhat good compared to the rest of the MCU's output, both in TV and in movies lately. Anyways, all that goes to say is I have seen a lot of reviews for the Marvels being very, very mixed, and I think it also getting another rotten score on Rotten Tomatoes, which I don't put much stock in that, but it does sort of indicate a more negative tone to the reviews. But for me, it's been kind of wild, because I've seen people give the movie like 8 out of 10s, but then I've seen like reviewers that I've trusted and followed here on YouTube for a while say it's like a movie to just completely miss, and one of the biggest misfires that Marvel has done. So it's just been a very disparate sort of spread on people's takes on this movie, and I have come out of this movie feeling like I actually really enjoyed the Marvels quite a lot. It is by no means like, I think, top tier Marvel. I'm not gonna run out and say, oh my god, Marvel's back, or it's amazing, but I actually had a lot of fun with this movie, and I think like for just a fun blockbuster time, it delivered exactly what I wanted and what I kind of expect from just like a regular Marvel project, and it felt kind of refreshing after so long. And so just looking at these reviews, I kind of have to chalk it up to a degree to just the disparate feelings that we've all had on Marvel, and people kind of like putting it into this larger Marvel framework that they're feeling about stuff instead of taking the movie as it is. And I get that that's somewhat fair, but it's just so weird to me, like the second coming of Jesus, or like the worst film Marvel ever made, and I just sort of watched it and I'm being like, it's good, and I had fun, but it's nothing to write home about. And I have issues. I have some pretty significant issues with the film, but overall, I think it was just a really good time. And let me start first where I think that is mainly centered upon, and that is the titular Marvels. I found all three of these characters to be so wonderful, and I loved their chemistry, and I thought that they bounced off of each other really, really well. I mean, ironically enough, I found Captain Marvel to be the least engaging of the three, with Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan, being so wonderful. Like, just the actress playing Miss Marvel, you can just tell she's having so much fun. You know she's a fan of Marvel, and you can see that in her performance, and she just, everything is, she's giving 110%. She's fangirling out both as a character and as an actor, and it just really reads as true and real, and she's just having so much fun, and her face is so expressive and wonderful. I actually also really liked Monica Rambeau. You know, she's not given a ton to do here, but I think she just has this like very sort of fun, relaxed vibe that even when she's giving these sort of like very heavy emotional moments that she has to bounce off of Captain Marvel and their strained relationship, she still manages to make it feel very personable. And I think it could have been very easy to play this character in this film as someone who's like carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders and being very kind of upset and angry at Captain Marvel for abandoning her, as that sort of her main emotional arc. But she doesn't carry that weight. Like, it comes up when it needs to, but otherwise she feels just like a normal person who's just like, yeah, I have issues, but like we can work through the situation. I'm not gonna be overly bothered by it. And I thought that was just really refreshing, because a lot of times, especially with superhero movies, like these storylines get very heightened. And yes, there is a tension between these two characters, but it never felt like it was overly burdensome. And I found that rather refreshing in her performance. And again, I think Brie Larson is probably the weakest link of the three, and I feel bad because I know Brie Larson can deliver as an actress. Like I've seen her in Room, I've seen her in other things as well, and she's very good. But it really feels like here, like there's just not a real sense of who Captain Marvel is as a character from, like, I think the MCU themselves and perhaps the director. And as a result, like, I think Brie Larson's kind of doing her best to give a sort of through line of the personality, but it doesn't completely feel like she's really honed in as like a full character. And I don't pull that on Brie Larson alone. I think it's just sort of a fact that Captain Marvel as a character has just never really solidified as someone with such a distinct personality as like Captain America or Iron Man or really any of the other characters. And so as a result, it's just kind of a little bit of a weightless performance, no pun intended, between them. But that being said, when she is playing off of Monica and especially Miss Marvel, there is, I think it does bring out the best in the character and in the performance that I think really just worked for me. So on all levels, that was fun. I think one of the biggest and rightful criticisms of the movie was the villain. And here's where I'll get a little into spoilers with her character, though there's not much to say about her, is that she is a very one-note character. She has one motivation, and she's very bland and very much I am evil throughout the whole thing. But maybe it's just me, and again, this is me kind of like putting the Marvel thing onto it. Honestly, I'm fine with this villain being just so one note. It does bring back memories of, like, you know, the Dark Elves of Thor, the Dark World, and things like that. But recently, Marvel villains outside of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, being the exception, and I think we can put that as always the exception in any of these comments, I found most Marvel villains to be ending up being very problematic in terms of the politics that I have with Marvel. I mean, looking at something like the Flag Smashers, for example, in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, you know, they're very much feeling like they're vilifying people like fighting for their rights, or even looking at Secret Invasion, which we'll talk about that in a minute, but that villain being like kind of vilifying refugees in a really fucked up metaphor that the Secret Invasion is its own whole thing. So I'm just like, you know what? This villain, she's a colonizer, she has a bit of a grudge against Captain America, and she wants to like steal resources from places. You know what? That's fine. It's not very super interesting, but it facilitates the plot in a way that doesn't offend me. So I guess I will take that, and maybe that's me letting it off a little bit easy, but frankly, I'll let it work with this film. I'll try and make it work for them. The other things, too, with this plot is I just think there was a lot of fun to be had in some of the choices and action going on here. Like, the fact that our three characters are kind of jumping around and doing, like, and using their powers. I think they didn't use it to its fullest, but when it was utilized, it was a lot of fun, and they had some good comedic moments and beats between everybody that made that, I think, really land for me. And also, there's one action sequence towards the beginning of the film where they're all sort of jumping around with each other's powers and fighting bad guys in different spaces that I found to be one of the most energetic Marvel action sequences I've seen in a while. I mean, a lot of Marvel action sequences, and this is definitely the case for the like Act 3 fight sequences of this movie as well, but a lot of Marvel action movies are very like quick cutting. They're very clearly like trying to get a lot of coverage and trying to hide, like they're not really showing off their action. They just want to just quick cut and make it like find the action in the editing room. But the opening sequence was very, very deliberately done and had a lot of energy and used a lot of very long, wide takes that showed us the action going on, and it just felt very fun. And actually had a needle drop moment that, you know, Captain Marvel with "I'm just the girl" moment from the first movie did not work. This needle drop worked very well for me, and I had a lot of fun with it. Some of the other later action sequences are fairly like, they're okay, they're fine. They don't knock my socks off, but I do have a bit of fun with them overall. This brings me into some of the more interesting criticisms that I feel with the movie, where it just connecting with the MCU show. This feels like the Marvel movie that required the most foreign knowledge to watch it, because you had Secret Invasion going into this, you had Miss Marvel going into this, and you also had WandaVision with Monica Rambeau going into this. And what's weird to me is I think especially Miss Marvel, the show, is the one that I feel was most beneficial to this movie because it give you a greater sense of Kamala Khan as well as her family. Her family gets moments throughout this movie to shine, but if I had not seen Miss Marvel, I would have been like, who are these people? And like trying to connect to them and trying to like get a sense of them. But because I saw Miss Marvel, like the moments where there's family's personality gets to eke out, even though I wasn't a huge fan of Miss Marvel, the show, I thought it was fine. I actually appreciated it more because I had that basis. WandaVision less so, but there was sort of fun where there's little references to WandaVision and Monica getting her powers that I'm like, you know what, that's actually kind of a fun little bit to play with here. So like both of those shows, while I have criticisms of both of them, I think uplifted this film. Weirdly, Secret Invasion, I mean, maybe not weirdly, because Secret Invasion is a utter piece of crap and one that is wildly offensive for numerous reasons. Go watch my reviews of that show if you're curious of my thoughts on that. But the Nick Fury from that show does not feel like the Nick Fury from this, like in this movie. In this movie, he's like got the weight lifted off his shoulders. He's making quips. He's making jokes. He's kind of fun. I'm enjoying Nick Fury's presence in this film to a degree, but that feels so wildly at odds with the character that we saw in Secret Invasion, especially where he left off, because like he left with his wife at the end of that, and his wife is nowhere to be seen in this one. So it's weird. And honestly, probably for the best, because Secret Invasion, whole fucked up thing. So honestly, the fact that this movie seems to just not give a shit about that show, honestly, for the best. I think is probably the best for everybody, especially since we do get to see the Skrulls in this film as well. And that also doesn't seem to line up with Secret Invasion, because Secret Invasion literally had the president like vilifying all alien life on the planet and seeming to not care for the Asgardians. And spoiler, we do get some Asgardian references here in the film, and so it just sort of was like, it did not match in my head of being like, oh, we're gonna bring more Skrulls to Earth in this movie, even though like Skrulls are apparently like a vilified race on Earth if you watch Secret Invasion. And I'm just sort of like, you know what, let's just forget Secret Invasion ever happened. I think everyone would agree, for the best. So that was just, it was just weird that two shows of the three that you can watch going into this help it, and one of them hinders it in a way that I think, you know, the movie's better for not paying attention to. Other things with the film, I mean, the alien planet, again, this is getting into spoilers, the alien planet we get to visit that's all with song was, I think, very clever and fun. Felt very like Disney Princess Planet, and I don't think was, again, utilized to its fullest, in the sense that I think they were trying to show like Captain Marvel having a life outside of the like her stoicism, and I think that it leaned towards that, but I wanted a little bit more with it. I wanted to see a little bit of her coming out of her shell than we do. But that being said, it works well enough. So I thought it was a very clever idea that like I had fun with, and I think is one of the more interesting parts of the film, but not fully utilized. And I think that that's a note for the whole film, is like there's a lot of fun to be had, but like the switching places, the song stuff, like none of it's used to its fullest potential, but what's here I do quite enjoy. Again, going to the movie feeling good, but not great in any sense. And then there's also just like small things here and there that just threw me out. Like, for example, you know, there's a moment where Kamala Khan towards the end loses both of her bangles, yet she still has powers, which confused me. Is like, is that a thing? Maybe I'm forgetting something from Miss Marvel, but I'm like, why is she still able to use her powers without the bangle? That might be a thing for Miss Marvel, but it was still weirdly reminding and communicated to me here. We also, like, small things like when they left the planet of the singing people, we never returned to them, so it's like, are they all dead now? I would have liked to at least get a touchback with that, to be like, what happened there. Also a few other, like, there's just a few like random questions here and there at the end, like why Monica had to be in the other universe at the end to close it. Why couldn't she have closed it from our side? It felt like it was there for a little bit of a false sort of sad ending, and also for the after credit sequence, which I'll talk about in a second. So like, there's just things that I'm like, what keeps this movie from becoming great in a few senses is very much those like little things that I'm just sort of like, why is that happening? Why does that make sense? Like, just things that I wish they had just been able to cover. And I feel like a lot of it is the fact that there's some very clear reshoots here. Like the moment, there's scenes in between like the big action beats that are very clearly there that were like probably written, you know, after they shot the bulk of it and trying to better connect things. And as a result, felt there's a little bit of a rushed feeling, not only where we see those small things get left aside, but like there's beats where I think, like, for example, Captain Marvel sort of like reveals like, this is why I was called I forget what she was called, like why I'm this big villain to the Kree, and Monica sort of like says like, oh, I forgive you, and it feels like it's a bit like of a very quick resolution to that emotional beat within a single scene, like when they're in that wide open like the grain field on that one planet, and I'm just like, I wish this had had more time to land and grow, and it just very much feels like, oh, we got to reshoot it, let's just shove these scenes all together, that sort of thing, which is it was a bit disappointing, and again, is what keeps this movie back from being great. But there are also fun stuff, like the stuff with the cat like eating all the people, and like the action sequence where like the people are like, all the Flurkins are eating everybody and trying to save them. I thought that was a fun little bit. So like, I do think there are some fun little clever gags that I thought were very weird and strange. And then the movie ends on this sort of big, spoiler, X-Men reveal in the after credit sequence, which was fun to me. I don't know, I think it was Kelsey Grammer as Beast there. I need to double check, and I'm just sort of like two minds of that. Like, he looked cool, and I liked Beast, Kelsey Grammer as Beast in the original X-Men movies, but I'm sort of like, can we not keep recasting these characters from the original X-Men things? Again, I want to see recasts of these things. Like, I was fine to see Patrick Stewart back for a one-off cameo in Doctor Strange as Charles Xavier. I'm somewhat okay with, Wolverine, Hugh Jackman being back for Deadpool 3. Like, there's an element of it that's like, for those particular projects and those particular ways those stories are set up, I'm fine with there being like the fan sort of like, oh, look, the nostalgia bit for them. But it seems to me that the way they're setting this up is that Kelsey Grammer is going to be the Beast going forward, if this is the X-Men that we're going to get. And I just feel like, oh man, I just don't want that. And also, Kelsey Grammer himself is kind of an iffy figure as well, if you look into some of his stuff. But even beyond that, it's just like, I would have rather the new Beast. Hell, I would have even rather the Beast from like the Young X-Men stuff that they were doing for it is Nicholas Hoult. That would have been even more interesting to me. But even then, I'm just like, I prefer just completely recast. We don't need to keep going back to the same well. Like, move further beyond that. So I was a bit disappointed in that. But it was cool to see Monica Rambeau's mother back, Captain Rambeau, in a different universe, and also to see a little tease of the X-Men. So I was generally excited by it, but it was just a little bit of like a iffy feeling on the Kelsey Grammer of it all. Also, Kate Bishop appearing at the end in a clear setup for the Young Avengers was really, really fun, and has me excited to see those characters pop up elsewhere. I have had many criticisms about Marvel going forward, but their casting and the energy that these younger characters have brought to the MCU has actually been rather fun. I'm excited to see when they team up with Yelena and a few of the other young Avenger characters that we've seen pop up here and there, because while there are shows that these characters have appeared in have not been particularly great, they themselves have been a lot of fun, so I'm curious to see them start to bounce off of each other. So yeah, that's ultimately kind of my feelings on the Marvels. Like I said, I think it is better than I expected a Marvel movie to be at this point, which is kind of sad to say, because I've come to a point where like I go into Marvel movie expecting to be disappointed and pleasantly surprised otherwise at this point, which is not a good place for Marvel generally. But that being said, I had a good time with this movie. This is not something like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, where it's something that I'm like, yes, you should go see this. This is an excellent movie. I think there's so much wonderful going on here. Like, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, I think, is a step above. And I don't think that there has been another Marvel movie since then, or in a while, even before Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, since Phase 3, really, that has had that level. And certainly the Marvels does not reach that level either. But it does reach the level of, like, good 2 hours at the movie theater. If you are just looking for a fun, good time at the movie theater, you don't want to think too hard about stuff and just like, I want to enjoy myself, this is perfect. This is a perfect blockbuster film. I'm someone who's like, I want to go watch like The Holdovers and a bunch more like more movies with more depth and teeth to them. I don't think this is going to be the movie for you, but if you're just looking for a good time to hang out with your Marvel friends, I think that this is going to be is going to be fine for you. So that's my feelings on the Marvels. I'd love to hear all your thoughts down in the comments below. But beyond all of that, I should also say I am going to be on the podcast Film Joy next week, talking about this movie in greater depth. So if you want to hear more of my further thoughts, please check that out there. It's with the wonderful David Chen, who I've also been appearing on his podcast, Decoding TV, where I did reviews of Gen V, the Boys spinoff show recently. So check that out. But beyond all of that, I just hope you all, my friends, take care of yourselves, and I hope you all live long and prosper.